Thanks everybody for being here. The first thing I want to do, we did a little introduction of me. One thing that wasn't mentioned is that I am also an adjunct professor at West Virginia University teaching higher education marketing and emerging media in the market, so AI, VR, AR, all things technology. I say that because I don't want you to think I'm coming into this session as somebody who's only about the soft side of marketing. I understand that we need to have both sides working together to have our most effective marketing. So for starters, I want you to stop and think about, what does the word empathy mean for you? Like, just think in your head, what does empathy mean for you? Often when I ask this question, people say, it means being nice. And well, that's not entirely incorrect. If you haven't read my book yet, if you read my book, you'll learn that how I view empathy as being able to see something from another person's perspective. And how in the world could there be anything more powerful than that to create effective marketing? If we can actually see our audiences, understand what motivates them, what drives them, what pushes them, what scares them, what challenges them, if we can understand that, we can craft messages that actually drive them to action. And I know a lot of the folks in this room are probably focused on communicating to prospective students, and that's a really important and essential audience for us. But I don't want us to forget about all the other audiences that we serve, and it's really, really common for us to forget that. We send these beautiful, warm, welcoming, inviting emails to our prospective students, and then we hand off communications for current students to admin assistants, chairs of departments, deans, folks that don't have a background in communications, aren't trained in communications, and we send these very transactional communications. But who are our biggest allies when it comes to recruiting? It is our current students. The experiences that they have on our campuses, that they have with our community, that they have with our offices, they tell those stories to their friends, their neighbors, their cousins, their brothers, their sisters, their parents. They tell those stories, and that shapes the perceptions of our institution. They go on TikTok and post videos about their experiences. They go on Reddit. They're on Snapchat. They're talking about the experiences that they're having. And if we're sending purely transactional messages, we are missing a huge opportunity to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace compared to the institutions that are not doing that. And I also think that we have a challenge very frequently where we talk to prospective students in a certain way until they become admits. And then again, it becomes very transactional. We need your transcripts today. We need your grades today. We need this today. And we stop thinking about what they might be thinking, what they might be experiencing on their end. So when I think about empathy, I think about how it does lead you to possibly be viewed as being nice. And it may lead some people to say that you're coddling your audiences. But I think it really means truly understanding and valuing our audience's emotions, their perspectives, their experiences, and using that to guide not just when, where, and how we communicate, but what is at the heart of that message. So how do you do that? How do you get this empathy for your audiences? The very first thing you need to do is listen. In order to understand anything about anything, you have to listen. You have to take the time to ask the questions and hear about the experiences that they're having. So you can do that through focus groups, you can do that through surveys, you can do that through social listening. With AI, that's easier than ever. You could dump a bunch of content, you can dump unstructured data into ChatGPT or your favorite AI tool, and get a sense of the sentiment around your university, get a sense of the sentiment of what students are experiencing at different points in the funnel, that they're experiencing at different points in their college journey. The second step is to really see them as a whole person. Every one of us in this room has a messy, complicated life. And I opened my book talking about an experience that I had 6 years ago, almost to the day. My dad was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer, And he was misdiagnosed before that, and if it had been caught when he was first having symptoms, my dad would probably still be here. He was very ill when he was diagnosed, and bedridden. The cancer had eaten away the bones in his hips, so he actually could not stand or bear any weight on those bones. And he was a man who was just the most vibrant, hilarious, inappropriate. You're starting to see why I am the way that I am. Weirdo, the weirdest person. He was this vibrant, funny, hilarious, active person. He was snowshoeing the winter before this happened. And suddenly now he was laying in a bed, and people were treating him like an old man. And I felt like they were taking away his agency. They were making decisions for him without consulting him. They were not letting him make decisions about what he ate, when he ate, if he got to take a nap. All of those things were taken away from him. And I was in the room, and I saw him as the whole person that he was, as the father who taught me how to ride a bike, how to tie my shoelaces, everything that I know about being a good person, I learned from my dad. And I had this person laying in a bed having all his agency stripped from him. And I needed those caregivers to see him as a whole person. I needed them to see that he was all these other things before he was an old man dying in a bed. And when I was able to make that change, I saw a dramatic change in how the nurses were treating him, how the occupational therapists were treating him. They suddenly saw him as a human being. That is our audiences as well. We all have messy, complicated lives. We all have worries, we have concerns, we have issues, we have challenges, we have joys. There are people in this room who have to scoot out early to go to meetings. We have people in this room who are worried about a construction project happening at home. Everybody, that's your audiences too. Every member of your audience has this messy, complicated life. And it's really important to recognize them and see them beyond just donors, prospects, and parents, and craft messaging that speaks to them as people. And AI enables that at a level that has never been possible before. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. And then I think it's really important to meet people where they are. And I'm going to tell another story about a coworker that I had who was incensed because our prospective students were not completing the final enrollment steps. And when we asked them why, they said, well, we didn't know, you didn't tell us. And we'd sent it to their official university email. Were they checking their official university email? They were not. And this person, I was about to say her name, was like, well, that's too bad. That's how the cookie crumbles. They need to be checking their email. We're not going to do anything else. They need to grow up, buck up, buttercup, and check your institutional email. That might be the dumbest thing I've heard in my career. Because what does that do for us? How are we going to make them do something that, from their perspective, isn't necessary at that point in their college journey? They don't see themselves yet as our students. We're seeing them as our students. They don't see themselves that way yet. If we're talking about a traditional population of students, they're worried about finals and prom and getting all the stuff for their residence halls and paying their tuition and their senior pictures and getting their yearbook. They're not thinking about all the stuff we want and need them to be thinking about. So we need to reach them where they are and to be really aware of the emotional context that they're in that moment. I often talk about non-traditional students here. What would be the very worst time to send communications to try to encourage a non-traditional student to enroll in college? I would say the second half of August. Because what is everybody doing? They're getting back to school. They're in that whole stress of maybe squeezing in one more vacation before the end, getting school clothes for their kids, getting the backpacks, all the school supplies, all of that. That's a terrible time to say, hey, come to school. They're like, I don't need one more thing. Empathy is knowing and understanding that they're thinking, I don't need one more darn thing in my life today. But what's the best time? 2 weeks after the start of the new year. Everybody has had their little holiday break. they're gone back to work and they're miserable. Even if you love your job, you're still like, I want to live a heiress's life, and I want to not have to work because these last 2 weeks were the bomb. And they're ready. They've made New Year's resolutions. They're ready to make changes in their lives. This is a great time to try to market to them. And that's what I mean about applying empathy, not just to what we say, but when we say it. Don't put pressure on someone at a point in their life where they're already overwhelmed with pressure. For the students, as we're thinking about matriculating them for fall, think about the messaging that you're sending right now to them, and think about, are we adding one more stressor to their plate, or are we communicating the need that they have to complete a task? Are we communicating that to a way that says, we understand that you might feel overwhelmed right now. How can we make this easier for you? I think, and I believe truly, that empathy builds trust in your institution. Because if you feel seen, you feel like you can trust that person. So if you think about the last time that you felt seen, you probably have a great deal more loyalty to your brand. I'm going back to the dad story. When he was dying, I flew home, and he had to have an emergency surgery, and I had to call Delta Airlines and say, I need to change my ticket. I'm panicked, like my dad is, I need to be here with my dad. And they said, girl, don't worry about it. We will just call us when you're ready to come home. When I was ready to come home, they got me my ticket for the same price as the original ticket, and they upgraded me to first class because of what I had just gone through. I will die for Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines could have me sit on a tarmac for 5 hours, and I'd be like, it's okay, they're lovely people. They mean so well. But I have loyalty 6 years later to Delta. I'm ride or die Delta because they saw me. The person on the phone was like, honey, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I understand the experience that you're having. Let me do what I can to make this right for you. And I will ride or die for Delta forever because of that. And when we're in this really competitive and noisy environment where everybody is sending the same kinds of messages to your prospective students, your incoming students, people are trying to steal your incoming students. I talked to someone yesterday that said Syracuse was trying to steal some of their students at this late date. That people are trying to steal them. Building that loyalty where they feel seen on your campus is going to be a big differentiator for you. So our audiences are overwhelmed. If you have a high school student in your family, or you do, you enter your secret shopper, you're getting overwhelmed with emails, right? You're getting tons and tons. What gets noticed? Those communications that are different. And you know what nobody else is doing? They're not sending messages that make people feel seen. They're sending messages that look like they're the same for everybody. So best marketing is not rooted in just conversation and just conversion. It's rooted in care. It's rooted in caring about people. So if you think about, this is one way to think about how two messages could have that difference in that feeling of care. It's transactional, classes start soon, complete your enrollment now. Versus you've come so far, we're here to help you get across the finish line. Let's get your enrollment wrapped up together. That makes somebody feel like there's help here. I'm not alone in this. People are recognizing every effort that I've put in to get to this stage, and they're here to help me get to the next stage. If you're serving a lot of non-traditional students, if you're serving a lot of first-generation students, if you're serving a lot of students that that are on Pell, these students have defied the odds in a lot of ways to become students at your institution, to even apply for your institution. I know somebody whose mom couldn't even come up with the $50 to make that application, right? They had to scrounge around, get a job, whatever, to try to come up with that $50 to apply. But we need to recognize that they've put that effort in and help them feel seen, help them feel understood in that process. The great thing about AI is it really scales that empathy. And I get asked all the time, can AI be empathetic? AI can create a facsimile of empathy. If you train a custom GPT to understand this is what empathetic messaging looks like, you can create a facsimile of empathy. And I really encourage you to think about your brand GPTs, the GPTs you're using for any sort of enrollment marketing, and really think about how you can maybe put in some messages that actually are empathetic messages to help inform the training of those GPTs. Because you want to have, you know how these all work. I'm speaking to a group of people who are here at an AI summit. You know how they work. They're recognizing patterns. Give it some patterns of what empathy looks like, and that can help you scale that content. You can also use AI to see where students are falling off in the cycle, to refine and create even further segmentation of your audiences. I'm working with a client right now on a project to bring back students who stopped out without earning their degree, to bring them back to finish their degree. And we're segmenting that into a bunch of different personas based on behavior, based on where they are in terms of how many credits they earned, how long they've been out of school. We're not just assuming it's one size fits all. Every piece of information that we know about that student is informing which persona they're going to fall into. And that's really only possible because of AI. AI lets you do that. It also lets you generate those personalized messages. And I don't mean personalized isn't hey first name, and then a bunch of content that's exactly the same. AI can allow you to have that dynamic content within a message where we know this about them, so they get this paragraph, or we know that about them, so they get this sentence, that kind of thing, because that really shapes and makes that message truly unique. I think AI is so powerful in allowing us to send a different message for every single person in our funnel based on what we know about them. And AI also lets you segment by these life stages. For, like I was talking about with that client, we're talking about students, we're segmenting, did this student drop out because they were on academic probation? That's a very different message than someone who has 105 credits, they're one semester short. Someone who's been out for 10 years, maybe they have kids and a job. That's a very different message than somebody who dropped out last semester. So how can we think about segmenting? How can we use AI to segment those audiences further? And align the tone. Talking to a 22-year-old is different than talking to a 42-year-old. Talking to someone who has kids is different than talking to someone who doesn't have kids. Talking to someone who's underemployed is different than talking to someone who's maybe like, I just need a degree to get a promotion at this job I already love. So as much as you can do and understand about people by listening, by gathering information, by gathering intel, you can really tell a better story for those students. So this is the heart over hype marketing flow. It's audience, insight, emotion, action, and outcome. So the very first thing that you want to do is start by defining who are you speaking about and what do they care about. And spend time listening. Spend time with focus groups. Spend time with actual students. Spend time with examples of that audience and understand what do they care about. And if you can, try to understand what they care about at each stage of the journey. What are they caring about when they're on the tour? What are they caring about when they are submitting their application? What do they care about in May when the end of their whole K through 12 education is done? Or what do they care if they're non-traditional? What's driving them to come back? And what are the challenges and the obstacles that they're facing? I recently did a presentation for an RFP for a potential client, and we asked at the end, what would prevent you from hiring us? Why would you not want to hire our firm? And that gives you an opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to present some content for you that overcomes those objections. So understanding the challenges that they're facing, the objections they might have, allows you to craft content that overcomes that. And then what stage are they in their journey? How serious are they at this moment? Is this something that they're just thinking about, or is this something that they're, yes, I am going back and this is it, or yes, I am going to college right now. I'm not even considering working for a year, or fill in the blank. The next is to really look at the data that you have, whether that's surveys, AI-powered sentiment analyses, behavioral data, AI is so great. We can do these open-ended qualitative surveys now and not have to spend a fraction of the time to analyze the data in those surveys. We can be pulling from Reddit boards. We can be pulling from TikTok. We can pull from X, Instagram, all over the place to try to get a sense and a feeling of what would make somebody hesitate to apply. I love going on my clients' Reddit pages to see the types of questions that students and prospective students and alumni are asking about the institution, because you start to see how they're making decisions and what could hold them back. Yesterday in Mallory's session, she was talking about students aren't asking the question about, like, is there toilet paper in the residence hall bathrooms, because it feels like a dumb question, right? They might put that on Reddit, though, because Reddit is anonymous. So they might ask that question there. It gets you fresh insight. Why aren't they opening your emails? Why did they start their application and stop halfway? Instead of just hassling someone, every day you need to finish your application. We're waiting for you to finish your application. Johnny, please finish your application. Try to understand why they're not finishing the application and then respond to that. And then think about emotion. College is a major decision. Short of the person that you choose to spend your life with, or build a life with, or raise children with, this is one of the biggest decisions of your life. It's probably the biggest compared to that. It's a huge investment. Probably a home is the only thing that you will ever purchase that costs more than your education. But at the heart of it, people aren't making pros and cons lists of just facts. They're making pros and cons lists that include that emotion. I'm on TikTok way too much. I was on TikTok and I somehow got into college choice talk, where students were posting, hey, help me make a choice about where I want to go to college. And the reasons that they were saying, there were some, like, this one's more expensive, this one's a little bit less selective, but they always had something emotional, like, but it just felt right. Or I like the vibe on campus. Or the admissions counselors are really nice. Or I met a faculty member in my program and they seem really great. This isn't purely a fact-based decision. They want to feel reassured, inspired, supported. They want to feel seen in this emotional decision-making process. So as you're thinking about drafting content, changing content, updating content, ask yourself, what emotional need are we meeting in this process? So now that you've built this trust and this connection, now's the time to invite that action. But we want to make sure that we're inspiring the right action at the right time. So we need to have really clear, friendly calls to action. I know everybody already knows that. We want to offer options, flexibility. If this isn't the right moment, is there another action we can invite them to take that moves them toward that right moment? And giving them reminders that inspire confidence and get them to be thinking about, I can do this. For a lot of people, the challenge is going to come down to, I don't feel like I can do this. Like, I'm a very smart person, right? Like, I feel, it took me mumbles how many years I am to feel comfortable saying that. But when I went back to get my master's degree, I had so much anxiety about whether or not I could do it. Is this for me? Am I right for this? I'm a first generation. I'm the first person in my family to get a master's degree. Shout out to my sister, who was number 2. But it was very intimidating, and we sometimes forget about that. And so how can we drive them to that action in a way that reinforces confidence in their decision? And I really want to stress that action without emotion is just pressure. But emotion without action is wasted potential. So you don't want to just send these lovely emotional messages that don't drive to action, because then you've wasted that wonderful feeling that you've built up, that wonderful sentiment toward your institution, and it's just hovering with nothing for that person to do to take the next step forward. And then the outcome is not just how many people clicked on this form, how many people visited this website. It's really that stronger relationship. Yield and retention are so critically important, and there's so much missed opportunity with those. With yield and retention, if you build that emotional connection early, when they make that that TikTok that shows these are the schools that I'm weighing, the emotion is going to win. Emotion might not beat, it's a $100,000 scholarship at this other institution, but I hated the vibes there. Parents are probably going to say, well, too bad. But when things are more close to equal, that emotion is often the thing that tips people over. I talk to so many college-bound students who say that the final decision was based on a personal interaction that they had with someone or a personal message that they got from someone. So measure the things that matter. You're not going to be able to go to your board and say, well, just warm and cozy, I know. But you want to make sure that you don't overlook that trust, which is hard to quantify, but that trust exists. So start with what your audience feels, not just what you want them to do. Use tools to listen more deeply and respond more meaningfully, because heart and results reside in tapping into that emotion. So what could this look like for your campus? So what would change about your campaigns if you asked yourself, what does my audience feel right now? So this is the time of year when we're thinking about yield, when we're thinking about anti-melt, right? And we're thinking we have to do something to get these folks who were admitted and deposited to actually show up. What do we need them to feel to get them to show up? This is a really emotional time for students, right? You're so close to actually enrolling, you're so close to starting your journey, but you might be still choosing between more than one school. So what can you do to make that student feel seen, supported, and like they belong here, and that your institution is emotionally the right choice for them? So any point in your enrollment cycle, thinking about what does this audience member need to feel right now? I want to stress we're at an AI conference, and AI is a very powerful tool, but your heart is the engine. We do not want to say AI is all things to all problems, it solves every single problem. It doesn't. We need human beings. What I envision we're headed towards is a world where students have ChatGPT write their essays and their applications, and AI evaluates those essays and applications, and it's all just no humans involved in this whole process. And I hate that. I love AI. I train people on how to use AI all over the country. I teach it. I love AI. But AI cannot actually feel. It doesn't have lived experiences. That's where you come in. That's where you bring your unique individuality, your experiences, your empathy to the table, your heart. You can use AI to move faster, to go further, to be smarter, but keep the heart in the work that you're doing. So your call to action from this session is to think about what's one place that you can put this into action tomorrow. Is there a welcome email that you could make some tweaks to when somebody submits an inquiry form? Maybe think about how there could be more heart. Is there a yield campaign message you could be reshaping? A whole campaign that you could maybe start changing some of the language around? Is there a social media post that you could put out? Could you have some focus groups? Could you say, you know what, I want to get started on hearing what my audience is feeling at different points during the enrollment cycle, and I'm going to schedule a focus group this week. But what is something that you can do to start moving the needle forward tomorrow? So I'm happy to chat with folks, and we have a few minutes for questions. You can find me. I'm happy to chat with anyone outside the context of this conference. My website is Solve Higher Ed. Heart Over Hype book is where you can get the book if you were not among those that were able to pick it up here. And I love connecting with folks on LinkedIn as well, so you can find me there. Any questions? And we have a microphone so that the folks on the live stream can hear it.
Hi. Is it? Okay. Hi. Well, thank you for your presentation, first of all. Question, can you share a couple of the prompts that you would use to train your AI to be more empathetic?
A couple of the what?
Prompts.
Oh, prompts. So I actually have built custom GPTs uploading sample language. So I've drafted communications that I feel check the box for being empathetic, making people feel seen. And I use that as you're drafting content, use these attached examples to inform how you respond or how you create content responding to my prompts. Another thing that you could do if you don't want to build a custom GPT is you could prompt it to say, use a very empathetic tone, recognizing that the stage that a student is in this journey, and include, any details you have about that. The thing I like about custom GPTs is you don't have to do that every single time. You just do that once, and then you can have it change the content. One of the things that I did for a client was take some of their existing comms, build a custom GPT, training it on, I took a couple of them, rewrote them to be more empathetic, and then uploaded those to that training document for the GPT, and then basically uploaded all of their existing comms and said, rewrite all of this. And then, of course, always don't just copy paste what you get. Go back and make sure and blah, 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 check all of that. But that expedited the process a lot because a lot of comm flows have dozens and dozens and dozens of messages. And it can be really daunting to be like, Jaime, I do not want to go back and rewrite all of those. But to use generative AI to help with that. I also build out for the times when I'm actually drafting, having ChatGPT help with drafting comms, build out personas that really go into the psychographic, much less on the demographic profile of the student, but much more about their lifestyle, where they are, what's happening in their life, and having ChatGPT then create the content with the understanding of that persona and that persona's pain points, challenges, motivations, that kind of thing.
We have time for one or two more questions.
Yeah, a lot of hard truths to accept in your presentation, but we're over, I think we lose a lot of students in transactional communications. Any tips and we don't necessarily have control over the transactional staff, any tips for working with transactional staff and convincing them of the value of empathetic marketing?
Yeah, I like to start out by assuming that they want to be more effective. We hope they want it to be more effective. Having empathy for them to understand why they might not want to change is a good place to start. So this empathy piece isn't just about the audiences for our communications. I'm a better wife. Hi, Dave. I know you're watching right now. I'm a better wife because I really think about empathy. He's probably sitting there going, no, she doesn't. Sorry. But think about why might they not want to change, and then how do you then communicate to them to overcome that challenge? They might not want to change because they already have it all written, and it's more work. You're putting more work on their plate. So what tools can you give them to make it easier for them? Or they might have the mindset of that person who shall go unnamed. She's retired, so I'm not outing her, but they might have this mentality of, but we don't want to coddle them. So why do they have that mentality? Understanding, why do they think that? Is it because they're like me, Gen X, and their parents just kicked them out of the car and said, figure it all out, and so they don't feel like students should have to have their hands held? So how can you then communicate that message in a way that makes them say, okay, I get why we would want to do this? So this is a really long-winded way of saying you have to figure out with empathy what's keeping them from wanting to do it, and then provide them a toolkit that makes it easy for them regardless. It's just how you frame that toolkit based on what you can figure out about what their obstacles and challenges are. They probably have the same thing where they're worried about a construction project, or their husband didn't water the cat, or whatever. I don't have a cat. This isn't a dig at my husband. He takes very good care of our dog. But trying to understand what would hold them back from doing it. And I know this sounds like okay, Jamie, you just described this super hard, painful thing, but the results are what we're trying to get to, right? And I'm not just talking about being nice for niceness' sake or being empathetic for empathy's sake. I'm saying do this for results' sake at the end of the day. But I think that was a good question. Do we have one more? I don't want to hold people from lunch.
I was going to say I'm pretty loud anyway. Brett Haddock, I'm in Houston Community College, and I just had a question. A lot of times our students hit that window of wait time, so nudging, encouraging is important. How do you craft that along that process to keep frustration low?
That's a really good question. So when I have crafted communications for one of my clients that has nudges built in, I make those nudges not so anxiety-inducing. So it's really common to have your nudges be, the sky is falling, and if you don't do this tomorrow, you're not going to get in. And we know in our heads, we're going to send another message in 2 days that's giving them more time to do it or whatever. So don't do that. Let's not be like my Yahoo email account is just full of REI and Ann Taylor and whatever with you must buy now. And then the next day is free shipping's extended and the sale's extended. Let's not do that. And then also acknowledging if it's at a peak time when their inbox might be getting full of stuff from a bunch of different colleges, even acknowledging that. We know you're super busy, but we really need you to take this step in order to complete the process for fall or whatever. Make them feel oh, okay, you get that I'm really busy. This isn't just one more thing on my plate. This is something I really have to do because it's essential to move forward. Make it mean something to them. Make it have value to them to do it. And stop. I've done it before. I've worked in higher ed for 21 years. Stop doing the this is your last chance. Monday. Let's not do that anymore. Are we up on time?
We are at the conclusion, unfortunately. Jaime Hunt, everyone. Thank you so much. Lots to think about, lots to talk about over lunch. Please enjoy your lunch. We'll be back here at 1:15 for more information about how we can lead with our hearts in all that we do. Thank you.